Get a job, old man!
A quarter spun through the evening air and bounced off the old man's boot. "Get a job, old man," one of the Marines shouted, laughing so hard he nearly dropped his phone. Another one was already recording, panning from the sleeping figure slumped against the perimeter fence to the 3 young lance corporals in fresh-pressed Liberty clothes, howling at their own joke. The quarter landed in the dirt beside a frayed olive-drab field jacket. The old man didn't move. His chest rose and fell under the worn fabric. His silver hair matted against a rucksack he was using as a pillow. His weathered hands folded like a man who had taught himself to sleep anywhere, in any condition, under any sky. Private First Class Daniel Ramirez flicked a second quarter. It struck the man's knee. Still nothing. "He's out cold, bro. Look at him. He's probably drunk," said Lance Corporal Tyler Briggs, the one holding the camera. The 3rd Marine, Lance Corporal Kevin Chen, leaned out of the driver's window of a lifted pickup and yelled one more time for the lens. "Get a job, old man!" Laughter. Engine rev. The truck peeled out of the gate lane and disappeared down Holcomb Boulevard toward town, leaving the figure at the fence exactly as they had found him. Small, still, and seemingly forgotten. None of them knew yet. None of them could have known. But in the next 4 hours, those 3 Marines would beg for the ground to open up and swallow them whole. If you believe every American veteran deserves our respect no matter how the world has treated them, type honor in the comments right now and stay with me, because what happens next is something nobody on that base will ever forget. His name was Raymond Colbert. He was 74 years old, and 3 months earlier a mini-stroke in a quiet Ohio kitchen had changed the geography of his life. The doctors had called it a transient ischemic attack, a small warning shot fired across the bow of a long and extraordinary brain. His daughter Karen had moved him into her home in Dayton. She had installed handrails in the bathroom, set pill bottles in neat rows on the counter, and written her cell phone number on a laminated card that she slid into every one of his jackets. But 3 days before the Marines found him sleeping at the gate, Raymond Colbert had walked out of that house at sunrise, utterly convinced he was late to report to a command that had ceased to exist 4 decades ago. He had a Greyhound ticket stub in his pocket from Cincinnati. He had $12. He had a faded patch stitched to the left breast of his field jacket, a winged dagger over a silhouette of crossed lightning bolts, the kind of insignia that had never been authorized for public wear and had never appeared on a recruiting poster. He had walked the last 11 miles from the bus station along the coast, because the road signs had finally begun to make a kind of sense to him again, and when his legs had given out near the sign that read Camp Lejeune, he had done what old soldiers do when they are tired. He lay down where the ground felt familiar, and he slept. The video went up on the unit group chat at 6:14 p.m. The caption read, "Base Security's newest asset, outstanding sentry posture, Sergeant." Within 9 minutes, 12 Marines had reacted with crying, laughing emojis. Someone screenshotted the old man's face and overlaid the words "guarding the gate" in bold yellow letters. Someone else turned the image into a meme template. By 7 p.m, the video had been forwarded to a second platoon's chat, and a third. By 8 p.m, a lance corporal 2 companies over had posted it to a TikTok account he thought was private. It pulled 600 views in 40 minutes before he realized his mistake and yanked it down. The 3 architects of the joke were by then 3 beers deep at a sports bar off Western Boulevard, retelling the story louder with each round. Ramirez had set the video as his lock screen. Briggs was buying shots. Chen was telling a woman at the bar that he had done charity work that afternoon. None of them checked their phones for the next hour. None of them saw the storm building in the group chat. The one Marine who had asked, "Where exactly was this?" The one who had replied, "That's the main gate, idiot. That guy's been there since like noon." The one who had typed quietly without a single emoji, "Somebody needs to go check on him. That is not a joke to me." His message received no reactions, but somewhere on base, 3 hours into the mockery, the wrong person finally opened the video. Gunnery Sergeant Michael Tate had been a Marine for 22 years. He had done 3 tours in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan, and 18 months attached to a joint task force whose name he still would not say aloud in a room with windows. He was pulling off base in a beat-up Ford Bronco, heading home to his wife and his grill, and a weekend of absolutely nothing, when his phone buzzed with the forwarded video. He watched it once. He pulled over. He watched it again. Then he did a slow, deliberate U-turn in the middle of Holcomb Boulevard and drove back to the gate. The old man was still there. Tate killed the engine 15 yards away and walked the rest of the distance on foot, the way you approach a wounded animal or a piece of history you're not sure is real. He crouched down. He looked first at the man's hands, the knuckles, the thick white scar across the right thumb, the way the fingers curled even in sleep. He looked at the boots, which were civilian but laced military, and then he looked at the patch on the left breast of the field jacket, the one that had been washed 1,000 times until the colours had nearly bled out of it, and his whole body went still. "Delta," he whispered. He leaned closer, stitched above the patch, in thread so faded it was almost grey, was a single embroidered surname, COLBERT. Tate sat back on his heels. He pulled out his phone. He did not call the duty NCO. He called the battalion commander directly. Lieutenant Colonel James Harwood picked up on the second ring. Tate said 7 words. "Sir, I need you at main gate." Harwood, who had served under Tate's father in Fallujah years earlier, did not ask why. He was in his vehicle in under 4 minutes. When he arrived, Tate was still crouched beside the sleeping man, now holding an open bottle of water he had fetched from his truck, waiting patiently for the old man to wake on his own. Harwood took one look at the patch and said quietly, "Oh my God." He made a phone call of his own. 22 minutes later, a black SUV with government plates rolled up to the gate, and Major General Robert Whitfield, base commander of Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune, stepped out in running shorts and a grey Marine Corps t-shirt, because that is how fast he had moved when the name on the patch had been read to him over the line. By now the old man had stirred. He sat up slowly, blinking at the 3 strangers, and Tate had gently handed him the water bottle and said, "Take your time, Sergeant Major." Raymond Colbert drank. He looked around. His eyes, which had been clouded all afternoon, slowly sharpened. He touched the patch on his own jacket the way a man touches a wedding ring, and then he looked up at the general standing in front of him, and for the first time in 3 days he said a full sentence that made sense. "I think," he said, "I'm a little lost." Sergeant Major Raymond Wesley Colbert, United States Army, retired, had enlisted in 1969 at the age of 17. He had served 2 tours in Vietnam with the 5th Special Forces Group. In 1977 he had been among the first soldiers hand-selected by Colonel Charles Beckwith for a unit that did not officially exist, a unit whose name was typed into no muster roll and whose members were told to forget the patch existed the moment they took it off. On the night of April 24th, 1980, 46 years ago that very week, then Staff Sergeant Colbert had boarded a C-130 bound for a refueling point in the Iranian desert called Desert 1, part of a mission to rescue 53 American hostages from the US Embassy in Tehran. The mission was called Operation Eagle Claw. It failed. A helicopter collided with a refueling aircraft on the ground. 8 American servicemen burned to death in the fire. Colbert had pulled 2 of them out of the wreckage with his bare hands before the ammunition aboard the helicopter began to cook off. He carried the burn scars on his right forearm for the rest of his life, under a long sleeve he never rolled up in public. He did not speak about that night, not to his wife before she died of cancer in 2009, not to his daughter, not to anyone. The citation the army had written for him had been classified for 27 years, and when it was finally declassified, he had simply folded the paper in thirds and put it in a shoebox in the attic. Major General Whitfield knelt on one knee in the dirt beside the old man. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he said, clearly enough that Tate and Harwood and the 2 gate sentries could all hear him, "Sergeant Major Colbert, my name is Major General Robert Whitfield. I am the commanding officer of this installation. On behalf of every Marine on this base, I owe you an apology that no words are going to fix. You're a national asset, sir. You're the reason my generation knows what Joint Special Operations looks like. You are the reason those 8 families got their sons home instead of having them left in the sand, and you fell asleep against my fence and my Marines laughed at you. That is not going to stand." Colbert's eyes filled, but he didn't cry. He nodded once, the small, precise nod of a man who has been nodded at by generals before. Whitfield stood. He turned to Harwood. "I want those 3 in my office at 0600. I want their platoon sergeant present. I want the video queued up on the projector. And I want Sergeant Major Colbert's daughter on a flight from Dayton tonight. On our dime, Jim, not a penny from her. Find her." Harwood said, "Yes, sir." Whitfield looked back down at the old man. "Sergeant Major, We're going to take you somewhere warm. We're going to feed you, and we're going to call your daughter. Is that all right with you? Colbert said softly. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. At 0600 the next morning, Private First Class Daniel Ramirez, Lance Corporal Tyler Briggs, and Lance Corporal Kevin Chen stood at parade rest in the base commander's office. Their platoon sergeant, Gunnery Sergeant Michael Tate, stood 3 paces behind them. None of them had slept. Whitfield did not sit. He walked to the projector at the side of the room and pressed play. The 3 Marines watched their own video at full volume on the wall, the quarter, the laughter, the yell of "Get a job, old man." Ramirez's knees buckled slightly. Whitfield let it play all the way through, and then he played it a second time. Only then did he pick up a single sheet of paper from his desk. "This is the citation of the man you assaulted yesterday evening," he said. He read it aloud. He read the mission name. He read the date. He read the sentence about pulling 2 burning airmen from the wreckage of a helicopter that was about to explode. He read the list of the 8 names of the dead, slowly, one by one, pausing after each name. When he was finished, he set the paper down. "You 3 are not going to be discharged today," he said, "because Sergeant Major Colbert specifically asked me not to end your careers. He said, and I quote, 'They are young. Let them learn.' So here is what you're going to do. For the next 6 months, every Saturday and every Sunday, you are going to report to the VA hospital in Wilmington at 0800. You will wheel men to their appointments. You will listen to their stories. You will not speak unless spoken to. Or you can pack your bags today. Decide now." All 3 chose the VA. They signed the paperwork in Whitfield's office before they left it. Karen Colbert arrived at Camp Lejeune that afternoon on a flight the base had quietly covered, and she walked into the guest quarters where her father was sitting in clean clothes, drinking coffee, and looking out a window at a parade field. She did not run to him. She crossed the room slowly, sat down beside him, and took his hand. "Dad," she said, "you scared me." He looked at her for a long moment, and his eyes were entirely present. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," he said. "I thought I had somewhere to be." She laughed through her tears and said, "You did, Dad. You really did." Gunnery Sergeant Tate drove them both to the airport the next morning and carried Colbert's bag to the gate. At the jetway, Colbert stopped, turned around, and offered Tate his hand. Tate took it. "You looked at the patch," Colbert said quietly. "A lot of young men don't look anymore." Tate's jaw worked for a second before he could answer. "Sergeant Major," he said, "it was the honour of my life." Colbert nodded. He boarded the plane. He flew home. Within the week, Major General Whitfield had issued a base-wide order requiring every unit to receive a refresher briefing on military history, on veterans' affairs, and on the plain and simple fact that the tired old man asleep by the fence is always somebody. On the 3rd Saturday of his VA sentence, Private First Class Daniel Ramirez was helping an 80-year-old Korean War veteran named Walter out of a wheelchair and into the passenger seat of a van bound for a cardiology appointment in Jacksonville. Walter's hands shook. His oxygen cannula had slipped sideways across his cheek. Ramirez stopped, knelt on the asphalt and gently fixed it. Then he did something he had never done in his entire life. He looked the old man directly in the eye and he asked, "Sir, what did you do in the war?" Walter blinked. It had been a very long time since anyone had asked him that question. He smiled slowly, a smile that Ramirez would remember for the rest of his Marine Corps career, and he said, "Son, I was a radio operator on Hill 266. Do you have a minute?" Ramirez sat down on the curb beside the van. He said, "Sir, I have all morning." That is how it ends. Not with a medal, not with a parade, but with a young Marine who once threw a quarter at a sleeping old man, sitting on a curb in the North Carolina sun, learning for the first time in his life how to listen. Every veteran you walk past has a story. Every old man at a bus stop, every woman in the grocery line wearing a faded cap, every stranger asleep against a fence, every single one of them was somebody's hero on a day you will never know about. If this story moved you, if you believe respect is never wasted on the people who earned it, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because we tell these stories every single day. We will see you on the next one.